Hello, welcome to our today's program. Today we'll discuss constituents of food. The main objectives of today's lecture are food and its constituents, carbohydrate as food constituent, food proteins and their function, lipids as food constituents and their importance, and other food constituents. Let's start with the introduction. The foods are composed of many constituents which make their bulk and perform various functions. The main constituents of most of foods are carbohydrates, proteins and fats. These constituents are the main sources of energy in most of the living beings. They not only provide the energy to living organisms but also perform various vital functions in them. Besides, food also contains water, vitamins, minerals and trace elements. However, the percentage of these is very much low as compared to major constituents. The main constituents of the food are described as carbohydrates, proteins, fats and lipids, vitamins and water. First, we'll talk about carbohydrates. Carbohydrates may be defined as polyhydroxyaldehydes or ketones. They contain carbon, hydrogen and oxygen as their main constituents. Oxygen and hydrogen are present in the same proportion as in water. They are the main sources of energy for human body. Carbohydrates are mainly distributed among the plant food except glycogen, lactose and ribose, which are present in the muscles or in liver, human milk and animal cells respectively. Classification of carbohydrates. Carbohydrates are classified as monosaccharides which have single sugar unit, disaccharides with 2 sugar units and polysaccharides with many molecules of simple sugar units. Let's first discuss about the monosaccharides. Monosaccharides are simple carbohydrates which cannot be hydrolyzed to simpler compounds. Based on the number of carbon atoms present in them, monosaccharides are grouped into triose with 3 carbons, tetrose with 4 carbons, pentose with 5 carbons and hexose with 6 carbon atoms. Pentoses like ribose, xylose and arabinose are widely distributed in many roots and vegetables. Xylose and arabinose are not present in the free state. Both of them are present in gums of various origins like wood gum, cherry gum, etc. Now let's discuss some monosaccharides. First, glucose. It's also known as dextrose. Glucose is an aldose sugar. It is white, crystalline and easily soluble in water with sweet taste. Glucose is readily absorbed in the stomach. Glucose is present in fruits and honey. Second, fructose. Fructose is known as fruit sugar or levulose and is a keto sugar. It's sweeter than glucose. It's obtained by the hydrolysis of sucrose. Third, galactose. It's not found free in nature. Its only source is the hydrolysis of lactose. It also occurs in cerebrocytes of brain and nervous tissue. Hence, it's nutritionally important. 4. Mannose. This also does not occur freely in nature. Mannose is a constituent of prostatic polysaccharides of albumin, globulin and mucoids. Mannose on reduction gives mannitol. Fourth, sugar alcohols. The important sugar alcohols are sorbitol, mannitol and dulcitol. D-sorbitol is an alcohol made commercially from glucose by hydrogenation wherein an aldehyde group is reduced to an alcohol group. Next, let's talk on disaccharides. The disaccharides are formed by the condensation of 2 monosaccharides with the elimination of 1 water molecule. The disaccharides of nutritional importance are sucrose, maltose and lactose. Now let's discuss them one by one. First, sucrose. Sucrose is formed by the condensation of 1 molecule of glucose and 1 molecule of fructose. Sucrose occurs in sugarcane and beetroot. Second, maltose. Maltose is also formed by the condensation of 2 glucose molecules. Maltose is mainly present in malt. It's formed in the cereal grains during the germination by the hydrolysis of starch. Third, lactose. Lactose is formed by condensation of 1 molecule of glucose and 1 molecule of galactose. It is a type of sugar present in milk of all mammals. Now let's talk about polysaccharides. The main examples of polysaccharides are first, starch. These are complex compounds with relatively high molecular weight. Starch occurs widely in plant kingdom. Starch occurs in the form of granules which have characteristic shape when seen under microscope. Starch is a polysaccharide formed in nature by condensation of a large number of glucose molecules from 4,000 to 15,000. Second, dextrins. These are intermediate products in the hydrolysis of starch and consist of shorter chain of glucose units. Some dextrins are produced when flour is browned or bread is toasted. Third, glycogen. The so-called animal starch is similar in structure to the amylopectin of starch but contains many more branched chains of glucose. It is rapidly synthesized from the glucose in the liver and muscle. Fourth, indigestible polysaccharides. Indigestible polysaccharides include cellulose, hemicellulose, pectin, gum and mucilates. These types of polysaccharides are mostly present in the plant foods. They play a significant role in the different parts of the food. Now dear students, now let's discuss sources of carbohydrates. The main sources of the carbohydrates are bread, potatoes, cookies, soft drinks, corn, whole grains, legumes, fruits, starchy vegetables, milk, yogurt, etc. Now it's time to discuss second component of food, that's protein. The word protein is derived from the Greek word proteos, which means principle. Proteins are the components of all living cells and are important in practically all aspects of cell structure and functions. Proteins contain carbon, hydrogen, nitrogen and sulfur, and some contain phosphorus also. Proteins are large molecules formed from the combination of large number of simpler substances known as amino acids. Now let's move on to the classification of proteins. Proteins can be divided as simple proteins, conjugated proteins and derived proteins. Firstly, we'll discuss simple proteins. These proteins on hydrolysis by acid, alkali or enzymes yield only amino acids or their derivatives. Examples of this group are albumin and globulins found within all body cells, zein of corns, gliadin and glutenin in wheat, legumin and peas, and lactoalbumin and lactoglobulin of milk. Second, conjugated proteins. Simple proteins combined with the non-proteinaceous substances constitute conjugated proteins. This group includes lipoproteins, the carrier needed for the transport of fats in blood, nucleoprotein, the protein of cell nuclei, phosphoproteins such as casein milk and ovovitalin in eggs, metalloproteins such as the enzymes that contain mineral elements, mucoproteins found in connective tissues. Third, derived proteins. These proteins result from the decomposition of simple and conjugated proteins. This includes rearrangement within the molecules without breaking the peptide bond, such as that occurring with coagulation. Now let's discuss the functions of proteins. First, building block. Proteins form the main solid matter of muscles, organs and endocrine glands. They are major constituents of matrix of the bones and teeth, skin, nails and hair and blood cells and serum. Second, regulatory functions. The body proteins have highly specialized functions in the regulation of body processes. For example, hemoglobin, which is chief constituent of RBC, carries oxygen to tissues. Third, formation of enzymes, hormones and other secretions. Proteins supply raw materials for the body to synthesize enzymes like trypsin and pepsins. Hormones like insulin and thyroxine are proteinaceous in nature. Fourth, source of energy. Protein is generally considered as building material of our body. But when diet contains insufficient amount of carbohydrates and fats, body uses up proteins for the energy purposes. Each gram of protein yields 4 kilocalories of energy. Fifth, as binding factor. Proteins like lipoproteins, transferrin, phosphoproteins are essential to our body for transporting many chemical substances. Now let's discuss the sources of proteins. Plant sources, pulses, legumes, nuts, cereals, raisins, etc. Animal sources, meat, fish, poultry eggs, milk and milk products. Dear students, now let's move on to the other constituent of food, fats and lipids. Fats are the most concentrated source of energy and supply 9 kilocalories of energy per gram of fat. They provide the body's main reserve of energy and are essential for various functions. Like carbohydrates, fats are organic compounds composed of carbon, hydrogen and oxygen, but they differ from carbohydrates in that they contain much less oxygen and much greater proportions of carbon. Classification of fats and lipids. Lipids are classified into simple lipids, compound lipids and derived lipids. Now let's discuss them one by one. First, simple lipids. These are esters of glycerol and fatty acid. Glycerol is a 3-carbon alcohol with 3 hydroxyl groups, each of which can combine with fatty acid. Fatty acids are broadly divided into 2 main groups. First, saturated fatty acids containing no double bond and unsaturated fatty acids containing 1 or 2 double bonds. Now let's discuss first saturated fatty acids. These fatty acids contain no double bond, however, a single bond is present in between the 2 carbon atoms. The common saturated fatty acids are palmitic, stearic, myristic and lauric acids. Next, unsaturated fatty acids. An unsaturated fatty acid is one in which a hydrogen atom is missing from each of the 2 adjoining carbon atoms, thus necessitating a double bond between the 2 carbon atoms. A monounsaturated fatty acid has 1 double bond, for example, oleic acid. A polyunsaturated fatty acid or PUFA contains 2 or more double bonds, for example, linoleic, linolenic and arachidonic acids. Second is compound lipids. These are the esters of glycerol and fatty acids with substitution of other components such as carbohydrate, phosphate and nitrogen groups. Phospholipids such as lecithin and cephalin contain a phosphate and nitrogen group replacing one of the fatty acids. The next is derived lipids. These include fatty acids, alcohols, glycerols and sterols, carotenoids and the fat-soluble vitamins, for example, vitamin A, vitamin D, vitamin E and vitamin K. Now let's discuss the functions of lipids and fats. The primary function of fat is to supply energy. They provide taste to the food. The fats reduce gastric motility and remain in the stomach much longer, and the onset of hunger is delayed, thus giving a good satiety value. Fats are the carriers of fat-soluble vitamins, for example, A, D, E and K. Fats are needed for the absorption of vitamin A and its precursor carotene. The subcutaneous layer of fat acts as an effective insulator, thus reducing the heat loss from the body in cold weather. It provides the diet with the essential fatty acids as these cannot be synthesized in the body. The main sources of fats are plant sources, groundnut oil, coconut oil, gingerly oil and mustard oil. Animal sources, butter, lard, ghee and cream. Dear students, now let's move on to the vitamins. Vitamins are defined as organic compounds which are necessary for good health and vitality. Vitamins can be classified as fat-soluble vitamins and water-soluble vitamins. Now let's discuss first fat-soluble vitamins. Fat-soluble vitamins are generally associated with fatty foods such as butter, ghee, cream, oils and fats of meat and fish. The first vitamin is vitamin A. Vitamin A is found in the form of retinol and carotene. Vitamin A in its pure form is a pale yellow substance soluble in fat. It's an unsaturated alcohol which is stored in the body as ester. Vitamin A is found in milk, meat, fish, etc. This vitamin is found in highest quantity in the liver. Plants do not contain vitamin A but contain its precursor, the carotenoids, which are converted to vitamin A after absorption by the ingesting animal. The richest natural source of vitamin A is fish liver oil. 1 teaspoon of cod or shark liver oil supplies about 6,000 international units of vitamin A. The next is vitamin D. Vitamin D is known as the sunlight vitamin as it is synthesized with the help of sunlight. From nutrition point of view, it occurs in 2 major forms. First, vitamin D2, ergocalciferol, and vitamin D3, cholecalciferol. Vitamin D2 is formed when ergosterol found in plants is exposed to ultraviolet light. Vitamin D3 is the chief form occurring in animals and develops to 7-dehydrocholecalciferol on exposure to ultraviolet light from sun. The sources are sunlight. This is an important natural source of vitamin D. Foods rich in vitamin D are egg yolk, liver, fish and fish oils. Fish liver oils are the richest source of vitamin D. The next vitamin is vitamin E. This vitamin is also known as tocopherol, the most common and active type being alpha tocopherol. Sources are: the principal sources of vitamin E in the diet are vegetable oils, hydrogenated fats from vegetable oils, whole grains and dark green leafy vegetables, nuts and legumes. The next is vitamin K. Vitamin K consists of a number of related compounds known as quinones. The important ones are vitamin K1, phylloquinone, vitamin K2, menaquinone. This vitamin requires bile for its absorption as it is a fat-soluble vitamin. The two forms of vitamin K occur naturally. Vitamin K1 is in green plants and K2 which is formed as a result of bacterial action in the intestinal tract. The main sources of vitamin K are green leafy vegetables like cabbage, cauliflower and pork liver. Now let's discuss water-soluble vitamins. First are B-complex vitamins. The main B-complex vitamins are B1 thiamine, B2 riboflavin, B6 pyridoxine, B12 cyanocobalamin, niacin, folic acid, pantothenic acid, biotin and choline. Now let's discuss them one by one. First, vitamin B1 or thiamine. This vitamin is widely distributed throughout the plant and animal kingdom. It's stable in its dry form. The vitamin is present in good amount in pulses and nuts, liver, meat, chicken, egg yolk and fish. Next, vitamin B2 or riboflavin. It's a yellow-colored pigment widely distributed in the plant food and in small amounts in animal foods. Dried yeast is a rich source of this vitamin. It was named riboflavin because of the similarity of part of its structure to that of ribose sugar. Next, niacin or nicotinic acid. Niacin is also known as nicotinic acid or nicotinamide. It's a white crystalline compound soluble in water, stable to heat, light, acids and alkalis. Whole cereals, dried yeast, liver, groundnuts, legumes and fish are good sources. Next, vitamin B6 or pyridoxine. Vitamin B6 is otherwise known as pyridoxine, pyridoxal and pyridoxamine. Vitamin B6 is soluble in water and distributed throughout plant and animal kingdom. The best sources are meat, especially liver, some vegetables and grains with bran. The next, pantothenic acid. Pantothenic acid is widely distributed in all foods, particularly of animal origin, whole grains and legumes. It occurs in small quantities in milk, fruits and vegetables. The next is folic acid. Folic acid is also known as folacin. Pure folic acid occurs as bright yellow crystalline compound slightly soluble in water. The main sources are liver, kidney, yeast and green leafy vegetables. The next is vitamin B12 or cyanocobalamin. This is the most complex of the B vitamins. It has been named as cobalamin as it's found as a coordination compound with the cobalt. It occurs in several forms known as cobalamin. The main sources are animal foods only like organ meats, muscle meat, fish, poultry, milk and eggs. The next is biotin. Biotin is a relatively simple compound, a cyclic urea derivative which contains a sulfur group. In tissues and in foods, it is usually combined with proteins. The main sources are dried yeast, organ meats, rice polishings and soya bean. The next is choline. All living cells contain choline, principally in phospholipids which are essential for the structure and function of cell membranes and serum lipoproteins. Egg yolk is rich in choline, but legumes, organ meats, milk, muscle meats and whole grain cereals are also good sources. Now let's discuss the next water-soluble vitamin, vitamin C. Ascorbic acid is an essential nutrient for man as he lacks the capacity to synthesize it like any other animal species. The main sources of this vitamin are fruits, All fresh fruits contain vitamin C. Amla, the Indian gooseberry, is one of the richest sources. Vegetables, especially green leafy vegetables, are rich in vitamin C. Now let's discuss the last constituent of food, that's water. The food that we consume also contains water as one of the constituents. Fruits and vegetables have high percentage of water that ranges from 80% to 95% of the eatable part of the fruit. There is a very good source of water in the diet within the solid foods. The main sources are cucumber, watermelon, tomatoes, orange, sweet lime, lemon, grapes, pomegranate, pineapple, brinjal, bitter gourd, etc. Well, that's all that we have today. I really hope you would have understood. Thank you.